up on the screen now. Welcome to the show, Eli. Well, welcome back to the show, actually.
Thank you so much for having me back. It's been a while, but I'm excited to get right back into football. A lot of exciting stuff going on right now.
Oh, yeah, of course. A lot of exciting things going on. So first thing that we're going to talk about, we're going to kind of just jump right into it because pretty big stuff has gone on this past week, and I think it's affected a lot of what's going to be done with the Panthers going into the draft and how they kind of prepare for next season. So with the question of the day first, we'll shoot this with you guys. Now that the Panthers have traded for the quarterback, Sam Darnold, did they make the right move? Was it a smart decision? I want to know what you guys think. So for anyone that's watching, you let me know what you think. Did the Panthers make a smart move? Is it the right choice going for Sam Darnold as at the quarterback position? So as far as a rundown for it goes, I mentioned it a little bit earlier in the show. They traded a 6th rounder this year, a 2nd rounder, and a 4th rounder next year. So you have a couple of different picks going to them next year, and then the 6th rounder this year, which really won't amount to much for the Jets, more just like depth rotational guys, if anything, if they don't even use it to trade to something else. Let me ask you, Eli, I'll kind of throw the question out to you. What are your thoughts just on that move?
Honestly, I thought it was a home run from pretty much every angle you look at it. Sam Darnold is definitely a guy coming out of college. People saw the potential in him. He didn't have the most stellar college career, but he has all the arm talent you could ever want in a quarterback. He's able to make pretty much every throw. But he was really in an awful situation with the Jets. They had issues stemming from the front office, head coaching, offensive coordinator. They didn't have weapons around him. So it was really just a mess.
A literal dumpster fire. I think that's a fair way to call that.
Oh, absolutely. But now in Carolina, he'll have the opportunity, the best opportunity he's had to succeed. You've got arguably the best running back in the game right now in Christian McCaffrey with him. You have really solid wide receiver core, Robbie Anderson, who he has the familiarity with coming from the Jets system, as well as DJ Moore, I think is one of the more underrated receivers in the league. Then from there, you have definitely some pieces to build off of as well. Like they got some really nice guys in the draft last year, and Derek Brown and Jeremy Chin to really solidify that defense for the next generation. So this is definitely a team on the rise. This is definitely a great situation for him to go into. Plus, I don't think it gets talked about enough. The Panthers really didn't give up a massive haul for him. A second, fourth,
oh,
and a
not
sixth.
at all.
Yeah. So even if he comes in, he has a terrible year, and you stink next year, you're still in a great position because you own your own draft pick next year. So if there's a quarterback you like next year, I know Sam Howell's out of North Carolina is a name that's being thrown around. Obviously, way, way too early for top of the draft consideration, but he's had a great career down in North Carolina. So you're really in a great position to kind of see what you have in him, give him a full offseason. You don't have to start him right away because you still do have Teddy Bridgewater, who played his heart out last year despite not having the best numbers, but you're in a really good position if you're Carolina. And with this 8th pick, you have a lot of different options you can go to.
Definitely.
If a guy like Penei Sewell falls to you at 8th, I think that's immediate. You have to snap him up right now because no matter who your quarterback is, you need to protect him. You have a bunch of different offensive weapons. You have a guy like Kyle Pitts who could fall to you at 8.
That's who I'm picking for them. I really think they should go Kyle Pitts. I know that they have some offensive line needs, but man, if Kyle Pitts is sitting there at number 8, I really feel like Sewell's gonna go. He's got to go to the Bengals, right? They need offensive line, but then I heard the Eagles traded down because they thought that they were taking Jamar Chase, which I understand you want weapons for Burrow, but Burrow can't throw the ball if he's not protected.
No, exactly. I think it's hard with Joe Burrow obviously playing Jamar Chase had all that success with him. Apparently he's been lobbing the Cincinnati front office extremely hard to bring him in. So I wouldn't be shocked if we saw Jamar Chase go at 5. Other than that, I think it's down to Chase or Sewell. And no matter what happens at 6, Miami is going to take probably either Devontae Smith or Jamar Chase. So you figure the wide receivers aren't going to fall to Carolina at 8. So basically, I think it's going to be down to Pitts or Sewell at 8. Basically, whoever Cincinnati doesn't take, because at 7, that's the chart. I think they're a prime candidate to trade down in this draft. Maybe if somebody starts slipping, Maybe if a Justin Fields or a Trey Lance starts slipping a little bit more than anticipated, maybe we see somebody trade up with Detroit. But even if you're Carolina, what you can do is you could honestly take a slipping quarterback too. Like if a Justin Fields, maybe teams don't fall in love with him. Maybe he falls and he's still available at 8. Maybe he's still available at 8. So you snap him up at 8 and you maybe give Sam Darnold a shot, but
oh my God, you think that they would go quarterback though after giving up the compensation? On top of that, they took his 5th-year option too, so they added that as well. So you're committed to Darnold for 2 years and almost $20 million next year, I believe, is somewhere around that ballpark. I forget what the exact number is. That's a commitment to Sam Darnold. You think they would? I mean, I guess if Justin Fields slips to them at 8, maybe if they're not sold.
The thing is, we see around the league that the timer on quarterbacks is a lot shorter than it used to be. You used to be able to give them 2, 3, 4 years before you really decided what you want to do with them. But great example, we saw what happened with Josh Rosen. Arizona gave up on him after 1 year, and his career has kind of been in the tube ever since then. He's been bouncing around practice squad to practice squad. So the timer on quarterbacks really isn't what you used to. Sam Darnold, since he's been in the league, has the worst QBR of any starting quarterback in these past 3 seasons. So it's not like he's had a great career up to it. So I feel like if Carolina had a chance to draft somebody, maybe they fell in love with Fields earlier in the draft process, but knew, especially with San Francisco trading up, that they wouldn't be able to get him. So it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes and what's going on in that Carolina meeting room.
Oh yeah. I'm really curious to see how it shakes out. So I'm just going to kind of rattle off a couple of names here so we can get a good idea as to like where the Panthers are going into this draft right now. So some notable losses, and the way I kind of have been breaking down teams is a notable loss I would consider is somebody on the team that has played at least like 60% of the snaps or more. That's somebody who is a starter. They're on the field for at least like, 2 or 3 downs every single set of 4. So the way I see it, Chris Reed from the left guard, he's gone. Curtis Samuel, wide receiver. There's a couple of other people they lost, but those are like the 2 big guys that were at that 60% plus mark. Everyone else is anywhere from like 30% or less. That they're more rotational. They were nothing. The Panthers didn't really absorb any massive losses. Like Curtis Samuel is probably the biggest loss there. And whether you argue Chris Reed or not, I mean the Panthers' offensive line wasn't terrific last year, so you could kind of argue that the loss isn't as big as the name might sound. As far as signings go for them, they picked up edge rusher Hassan Reddick. He brings in 12.5 sacks for the team, which is great because pass rush was a huge position in need for them. And they got somebody who's coming off a career year at this point, and it looks like Hassan Reddick's just trending upwards. So I'm excited for this pick for them. This should help really improve the defense. Obviously, quarterback Sam Darnold, we just talked about that. They brought in wide receiver David Moore, which I think really helps just solidify the case that Darnold should be good in Carolina, because you have DJ Moore, David Moore himself, 35 catches, 417 yards, 6 touchdowns. Those are solid numbers for a receiver if he's just playing the number 3 role. And then you also have Robbie Anderson, like you mentioned earlier, somebody he played with on the Jets. You have Christian McCaffrey, who, as long as he's 100% healthy and ready to go and playing at full speed, that's a really good offense. And then on top of that, they also just recently signed, and this was literally yesterday, I think, is when they announced it officially, cornerback AJ Bouye from the Broncos. I'm curious about that signing because he played 7 games last year, allowed a career-high 65.7% completion percentage when thrown at him, and also a career-high 108.4 passer rating allowed. Bouye has been regressing since that year 1 with Jacksonville when he had 6 interceptions, and they had that really solid defense when Jalen Ramsey and Bouye were playing on both sides. I don't really know if this fills a position in need for them, because the needs that I have listed, and let me know what you think about this. I have tight end, offensive lineman, linebacker, and then I question mark cornerback now because they signed Bouye. When I was planning for this, I was going to talk about corners, but they have Bouye now, so I don't know if that really fills that position of need or not. I'm curious what you think, though. Am I missing anything on that as far as team needs are concerned? I think those are the 4 positions that you could really kind of narrow down and look at the most.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. Those are probably the 4 biggest needs they have. The thing is, losing a left guard isn't as severe an issue. Like, obviously, you don't want to lose any offensive lineman, especially when you didn't have a great offensive line to begin with. Continuity is a huge issue. But in this draft, you could see a couple guys going at the top of that second round where they're picking. So I think they can address that. Like, you can get a guy like Jalen Mayfield out of Oklahoma. Maybe a guy like Alex Leatherwood, who's a fringe first-round pick, but will definitely be early second-round pick. So there are definitely some guys who can make an impact on the offensive line if you don't grab Sewell in the first round. But as for the other positions of need, being such a young team, I don't think there's any position that they're solidly like, oh, we don't need this at all. Maybe that's receiver. They have two solid options of Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore, and obviously bringing in David Moore, a veteran who's been around with Seattle for a couple of years, played really well with Russell Wilson. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey has some injury issues, only played 3 games last year, even though he played out of his mind in those 3 games. Having a guy on the field is important, and you lose a guy like Mike Davis. So having a guy to be able to having another running back to help them out in case McCaffrey does go down, or even just to manage his load. Like, you have a guy who missed all that time, not being able to put a productive running back on the field, especially for a quarterback who you're trying to develop in Sam Darnold. It really hurts them a lot. So we could maybe see him grab one of the combo backs in the second round. Chubba Hubbard is someone I'm interested in. That would be a good fit for him. He was a workhorse in college, did everything for Oklahoma State, was one of the most productive running backs in the country, but draft stock, obviously he's got a lot of tread on the tires, and that seems to worry some teams, but I think he could be a guy we could see the second or third round. That could be a guy that Carolina could target as well, take some of that off of McCaffrey, just be another guy they could plug in to be another talented running back.
Yeah. So I'm going to kind of like break down, and I like some of those mentions. I want to talk about the first 2 rounds specifically, because I think that those first 2 round picks that they have, and because they're so high, are going to be a really like almost like a deciding factor in how good this team plays out. So when we look at the body of work that Carolina had last year, they were 5-11. We're now extending to a 17-game season. So they lost 8 games by 1 score or less. It seems like the Panthers are in a position where they feel like they're like this close. Like, they have a team that's really good. Whether it's the quarterback play was the issue, maybe it was the lack of pass rush, and they've kind of resolved that issue with Reddick. I think that these first 2 rounds are going to be really big for them. I want to say it's more so the offense than it was the defense that are issues, which is why I kind of prioritize, like in that order, tight end, O-line, linebacker, corner as the more positions of need. Let's talk about kind of just like the key players. So I'm assuming Sewell goes to the Bengals when I make this option, or when I make this choice for them. They either got to go Kyle Pitts or Rashawn Slater in the first round. They need they have Moten that's going to be playing tackle for them, but they need another tackle on the opposite side of him. I'm thinking first round's probably going to be someone like Kyle Pitts or Rashawn Slater. And then I think as far as tight end offensive line goes, whatever you don't select in that first round, you need to target in the second round. I think those are the 2 real glaring holes at the team. Like you said, they're a really young team, so there's no real position you can say isn't for them. But, I would say that those 2 are the most glaring. For the second round, I really like Pat. I think his name's pronounced Freiermuth from Penn State, 6'5", 260. He's not afraid to put his head down. I was watching some clips from him earlier before the show, and dude, that guy, he reminds me of Rob Gronkowski. And then funny enough, I was going through like PFF's grading of him and stuff like that, and they actually called him a poor man's Rob Gronkowski, because I mean, the dude's tall, he's big, he will literally lower his head and run somebody over. They had some really good clips of just some plays he's made. So I think that if they go Slater in the first round, they should definitely take a look at him if he's there in the second round. I feel like this draft, not a lot of teams are really targeting tight ends that I can think of off the top of my head. I think Kyle Pitts has the potential to fall to 8th, and if he doesn't go 8th, he might fall a little bit further than that if like the Panthers don't go tight end. So I think someone like Freiermuth might be around in that second round early pick for them to grab. And then if they go Kyle Pitts in the first round and they need an offensive lineman, I really like Kenrick Green from Illinois. He tied the Power 5 for lead with 14 big time blocks, not tackles, big time blocks. PFF graded him 87.8. Really big dude. I believe his numbers were 6'5", 315. So massive man. You know, he has the strength, the ability to bulldoze somebody over. I really like him as well. I'm curious who you would probably give them in those first couple of rounds, though, if it's not any of the guys that I just mentioned.
Yeah, so I think basically it's down to Pitts. If Pitts is there and Sewell doesn't fall to them, I think they're going to take Pitts. But a name I kind of want to mention, because you mentioned linebacker as one of their needs, a guy like Micah Parsons out of Penn State. The dude flies around the field. He's a very modern-day linebacker that's sideline to sideline, can play all 4 downs, can cover better than the average linebacker. He's not a small guy. He's about 6'3", 245, so he's definitely a big, broad-shouldered guy, but the things he's capable of doing around the field, he could be that next generation of Carolina linebacker. I know Carolina, one of the younger franchises in the league, but they've been well known for their linebackers. You see guys like Thomas Davis having potentially Hall of Fame careers. And you see guys like Luke Kuechly, who fortunately his career was a little shorter than we would have liked, but the dude could play as well as any linebacker in league history. But linebackers are a very important part of what Carolina does. So I could see a guy like Micah Parsons realistically going at 8 to Carolina. The biggest issue people have with him is, one, he opted out last year. So that could definitely play a part in it. That may make him slide a little bit. He may be available later in the first round. He may even fall to the second round. I doubt he will, because he's far and away the best linebacker in another.
I was just gonna say. So would you say him in the first round? Is that what you're going if they don't go Kyle Pitts or Penei Sewell, or are you saying he would maybe if he slipped into the second round to them?
I would say in the first round, he's definitely an option. He has the talent to go top 10 and even top 5. But again, with him not playing last year, probably wouldn't have helped either way, because Penn State was awful.
I'm really curious to see, like, with the people that didn't play last year, how much that actually affects people in that drafting process. If they shy away from taking somebody that in any other draft would be literally a top 5 pick, or if they're just not going to care that, you know, the tape is there, a year off isn't going to kill somebody at such a young age. I'm really curious to see how that affects people.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, because you see a guy like Jamar Chase, that conversation doesn't even get brought up. He didn't play at all last year, opting out, but everyone says he's not falling past 6, because Miami apparently loves him even more than Devontae Smith, with Devontae Smith obviously being not a big guy. Me and him weigh about the same. He's about 170, so Devontae Smith's a very small guy, but his production in college was insane. I could also realistically see Carolina taking a wide receiver that falls to them, maybe like if Devontae Smith is there at 8, if Jalen Waddle's there at 8, having a guy like Jalen Waddle running around with Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore would be a nightmare to try.
That'd be quite a receiver group if they do run wide receiver. That's like something where I've thought maybe they could go wide receiver, but I felt like because of the move they made bringing in David Moore, they might shy away from that. But I mean, you're not wrong. So if they brought in somebody like Jalen Waddle, I kind of like Jalen Waddle more than Devontae Smith just because of the size thing. I don't know how that's valued with the NFL teams, but I don't know. Like the size thing kind of scares me because 170 is small. It's very small. So, I don't want to say very small, but like, I don't know. It's just like when I think of a NFL wide receiver, you're probably, unless you're like, 5'6", 5'7", and you're one of those smaller guys, 5'8", 170 is just very small for somebody as tall as Devontae Smith is. I think that's crazy. I like that though. Wide receiver. So you think that they may take a wide receiver?
I don't think it's out of the question. We see it worked out great with a team like Dallas last year, who we know they didn't need a receiver coming in the draft with Gallup and Cooper on the outside. But they ended up taking CeeDee Lamb, and it was a home run for them, even with insert name here playing at quarterback last year for Dallas Cowboys. It could have been you if you asked nice enough. We saw the wide receivers were still extremely productive. Cooper had a decent year. Gallup had a decent year, and CeeDee Lamb. So the NFL, the modern day NFL, is more about getting the ball deep, getting the ball down the field, having multiple receivers who can do a lot of things. We see a team like Kansas City that's basically built a track team out there. These aren't like the biggest and the baddest receivers, but they're running by people, they're beating people on in-cutting routes. Kelsey taking up space in the middle of the field. That seems to be the modern day philosophy in the NFL. Like, get guys who can burn down the sidelines and have a tight end soak up the middle, which seems to be what the Patriots were doing this offseason.
Yeah.
Bringing in the 2 tight ends, obviously. And then bringing in speedy guys like a guy like Nelson Aguilar, who's been known as a deep threat the entire career, and then a more possession type of guy like Kendrick Bourne. So the NFL's changing. It's an offensive-centered game, and it's speed, speed, speed. That's why I could see a guy like Micah Parsons, because he is that fast, modern NFL linebacker that can play sideline to sideline and keep up with these fast guys.
I'm curious to see how that shakes out. You bring up a really good point with that. It feels like some linebackers are getting a little bit smaller and a lot of bit faster is what it feels like. And then you see a team like Tennessee who's switched to a refrigerator at running back, and now he's just starting to bulldoze teams for 2,000 yards. It's going to be interesting to see how that goes. I could definitely see what you mean with the Parsons pick now, though. I like that. Now, what about somebody like a little bit later? If you were to target somebody maybe specifically in that second round, if like, let's say, Parsons is off the board, all those first round guys you'd expect to kind of be gone. What's somebody you would look at there?
I think it's interesting to see, because there are a lot of offensive line prospects that I'm very interested to see what happens with them. I could see a big run on them in the first round, where we could see guys like Landon Dickerson out of Alabama and Alex Leatherwood also out of Alabama sneaking into that first round, even though they're considered fringe first round picks. Again, with the offenses doing what they do now, being so dynamic and trying to be more inclusive. So I could see an offensive lineman sneaking into the first round, but there's a chance like somebody could slip in the second round. Maybe somebody doesn't do as well in the physical traits as a team would have liked, but I could see Carolina grabbing somebody in the second round. But from there, they kind of have the world as their oyster kind of view to this. They can really pick whoever they want. They don't really have anything that's going to be a luxury pick, because even their positions that they're strong on, they could definitely still use some depth. Like cornerback, they could definitely grab some corners. We're going to see a lot of cornerbacks going in the middle of the draft, like the J.C. Horns and the Caleb Farleys. Maybe one of them slips. Maybe Caleb Farley has an injury concern, but I definitely see offensive tackle. So maybe a guy like Jalen Mayfield, like
Asante Samuel Jr. maybe.
Asante
Samuel Jr., Mr. Pick Six's son.
I could see him falling there too. I think that'd be a really good home for him. We see Sons doing well. Like we saw Anton Winfield Jr. make a huge difference in Tampa Bay last year on the championship team. So
the football genes run through the family.
Football runs deep.
I definitely agree. Cornerback is definitely an interesting. That's like one of those things where I really looked at it as a position of need, and then they went and signed Bouye. And when I looked into Bouye, I felt like I had heard a lot of negative things about him the last couple of years. So I don't know if that fills that position or not. And like I don't think I saw anything about money that he was given, but I wonder what the thought process is behind that. If they're going to put him as like a number 2, or if he's more of a depth guy at number 3 and they do go corner in the draft. I don't know, especially because he's putting up career highs in all the wrong categories. So I don't know how that works out for them. Cornerback is definitely a position I think they need to look at. I think it might be slightly lesser down on the totem pole, at least in their opinion, because of who they just brought in, but very curious to see where that goes.